wondered why Pros and Golden Demon Winners minis look so good? Well, it's all about the ability of painting that contrast light to dark while still maintaining smoothness. Okay, but how do you do that? Well, it's all about their process. So today I'm going to show you all the secrets I discovered about Golden Demon Winners' approach to painting smooth and contrasted minis. And it all starts from an idea. Here, for example, I wanted to paint red, but I also knew I didn't want to paint it in the usual way, that I wanted to move more towards the magenta. But that's a problem for future Alice, because I'll start introducing the magenta later on the highlights. For now, I just started applying a dark red on my already very dark red base coat. From an idea, pros already know they're gonna have to make adjustments. I start by identifying the major highlight spots. And since I'm starting very dark here, I aim to cover 80% of the model. So I have a bit of that darker base coat show through. Before you do this though, you need to pick the golden angle where you wanna see the meaning from. In this case, I wanted the right shoulder pad to be kind of the focus, so I choose this angle. Starting volumes can be very challenging, since there's no big learning structures out there for mini painters. But don't worry, I'm already working on changing that. Download my free guide for highlight placement. That should help a little bit. And by doing that, you also get updates and tips and other fun stuff. In this guide, I don't just talk about geometrical shape, but I tackle the concept of planes, which are facing the light and which the shadows. Even rounded shape are broken down in small flat surfaces. As the plane move away from the light source, they progressively get more shadow and less light. I then move on to a brighter red, covering significantly less space. Technique though is the exact same. I'm using a strong glaze to build up the opacity, so the color can kind of self-blend into the base coat. I thin the paint to a strong glaze, apply it to the surface, clean the brush where 80% of the paint is gone, and then I spread the paint, creating transparency. Please note here I purposely didn't cut the footage, and so every time you don't see my hand on screen, I am wicking off the excess of my brush in order to blend and spread the paint. Layering like this allows you to create a softer edge between first layer or base coat and the second layer, instead of the harsh and defining line you would get by just layering with opaque paint. I go over more deeply on all these fundamentals of painting in my course, The Foundation System, where I break down consistency and brush control so you can really start mastering blending. So support the channel, improve, click the link down in the description. The trick here is not just about thinning the paint, but knowing that transparency doesn't depend on just the consistency of the paint, but also the quantity of the liquid on your brush. If you try to spread on thin paint on the wet palette, what's going to happen is that you will see transparency just like with the glaze, without having to add water. But what's gonna be inherently different is that your brush will feel heavier and the paint will resist a lot without water or medium. One flow under your brush. So that's why we thin the paint a bit. Way less than most painters think though. This is the first secret of the pros. Most of them, they use this technique that I personally like to call glaze layering to sketch the highlight spots by building up gradually the highlights. Because of the transparency they use, the paint dries quickly, making this method kind of fast, but also it's very reversible because you can do 30 of these and have no texture problem. And quite frankly, it's pretty smooth. You start clean, you finish clean. But let's be honest, it's pretty easy to stay clean and smooth if the contrast is low, and now it is. So the next step is all about pushing that contrast while keeping everything clean and avoid chalky blends. But how do you do that? Well, pros simply fix the chalkiness by 1. Creating as little as possible of it in the first place and cleaning up the rest with filters. Okay, but how? How really? As I start highlighting with dirty red plus pale yellow, I try to be really careful about my brush strokes. Chalkiness is often created by the excessive pressure that we use with the brush, so I am very delicate when I push the pigment around. The other thing that I do is clean up with filters. Meaning what? Well, it's about fighting fire with water. No metaphor there. The white pigment that's present in the pale yellow is pretty chalky and desaturated, so I fix it by adding a little bit of a middle tone, which in this specific case also allows me to give that magenta feel. Here it's pretty easy to go on the too magenta territory, so be careful if you want to redo the scheme, always keeping burnt red to balance out the colder hue of the dirty red, which is actually a magenta tone. Because we build up gradually with glaze layers layering the transition, like I said previously, there's no hard edge for this step to struggle with. So you'll find this step is gonna clean out perfectly the still remaining noise into the blend, giving us smoothness. If you wanna push more the contrast, you repeat this step, focusing on smaller and smaller areas. I moved on here to the gold trims just to show you the difference between pure layering with opaque paint and this glaze layering hybrid technique. When I layer with opaque paint, I leave a hard edge, which I'll then have to blend. Here in the non-metallic metal, it might actually be better. I personally like a more hard edge on non-metallic metal. Okay, but what's the ultimate secret of the pros? It's really simple. They're able to switch between technique real easily. The technique serves them, not the other way around. So the truth is that different effects call for different techniques. Sure, there are painters that might use the same technique throughout our minis, but most of them swap and adjust along the way. That's why it's hard to create a clear step-by-step, because there are so many smaller adjustments between the steps that we don't see, and therefore that we can't replicate. That's why I try to break down each technique and provide you with as many as possible. Learning many approaches and techniques sooner or later is gonna make automatic the process of switching between them. And I've just the thing here for you, a playlist of the major blending methods that you can learn and add to your tool belt. See you there! Or you'll see past me. It's a playlist, so it's pretty old, recorded long time ago, so